There is no question we need criminal justice reform in this country. But can we agree the DA's plan is not the way to do it? Let's get into it with tonight's Man panel. We've got former Trump Advisory Board member Jason Meister is here, along with the host of The Richard Fowler Show, Fox News contributor, The Richard Fowler, and director of the Libertarian Institute, backed by very popular demand. Scott Horton is with us. Welcome, everyone. So
it's good to see you, Kennedy.
Jason, I will start with you. The pendulum is swinging in the wrong and worst possible way.
Yeah, Kennedy, the tragedy that unfolded in Waukesha is a direct result of these progressive bail reforms. You take this suspect, this 39-year-old man, who was just released out of jail not even a week ago on a $1,000 cash bond. He was just charged with domestic abuse, resisting an officer, second-degree, recklessly endangering safety, disorderly conduct, and he bail jumped. So to let him out of jail on a $1,000 cash bond is ludicrous. I mean, he injured 40 people, 18 of which were children, okay? There are 6 that are now in critical situation. It's just a travesty that could have been avoided. And we need to start treating habitual criminals like Brooks as a threat to society. We need to remove them from the society, not release them on a $1,000 cash bond. And his crime record goes back to 1999 when he was only 17 years old. So this is a person that has not learned from his mistakes, from his crimes, and he should be removed, not allowed to run free in the society with his SUV.
Are we doing it wrong, Richard? Are we letting the wrong people out and keeping the wrong people in?
I think we absolutely are. I think you look at this case and you see what happened in Missouri today, where an individual that was in jail for 40 years for not committing a crime, for being what was falsely accused, was finally exonerated. And so when I think we have this conversation around why we should get rid of bail, I think we have to make some clear delineations. I think we first have to Eric's point, we have to make the delineation between those folks who have a long rap sheet and also between the delineation between crimes of desperation versus heinous criminals. If you are going into a grocery store to steal groceries because you cannot eat tonight, that is a crime of desperation that does not deserve a $25,000 or $35,000 cash bail. You deserve a bag of groceries. With that being said, if you are like this individual who decided you wanted to ram through a group of parade goers, then you shouldn't even had a car to begin with. And I think that's a delineation we have to make. And before I go any further, my heart goes out to, and I send all my prayers and thoughts to the families and the community of Waukesha.
Absolutely. You know, it's like I don't even know how they make sense of this. And Scott, I really do my best to try and reach out to progressives where we have some crossover as libertarians. But, you know, it's like I guess I have the same question for you that I did for Richard. Are we doing it wrong? Because obviously libertarians have been talking about criminal justice reform in very specific ways for a long, long time. But this is not it.
I have to tell you, I've never heard anyone, liberal, progressive, or leftist, or libertarian, or anyone, say that what we need is to lower bail requirements for multiple violent felons. I mean, that was just never on anyone's list, and leave it to the liberals to get it, half right at best, and screw their priorities up like this. But we absolutely need serious criminal justice reform in this country. We need to completely abolish all drug prohibition. It's so long overdue. We have to abolish all SWAT raids on civilian homes, especially night raids. This isn't Afghanistan with the Navy SEALs. We got deputy sheriffs running around acting like paramilitary soldiers in our neighborhoods. And we have probably, if you did some kind of review, there's probably 50 million laws on the books in this country in the various states and federally that should never have been passed and should be completely repealed, where people, especially the poor, are fined and feed and have to spend all their time in court and miss work and pay all their tax stamps and registration stickers, and it's just impossible for people to get ahead. And if you know anyone who's been involved in the criminal justice system in any way, it's an absolute nightmare. It's not like an episode of Matlock. It's like the worst day at the DMV. And people go to prison for decades based on very sloppy work, to say the least.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about the criminal justice system that I do about the immigration system. You've got good people who are rotting in prison who entered into the system because of the very things that you're talking about, that was kind of the Ferguson effect, in the same way that you've got good people who want to get into the country, but our government is really, really bad at separating the good people from the bad people, and they need to find a better way to do that, because people who have a long history of violent crimes, like you pointed out, they shouldn't be free to go and slaughter children. That's not how it's supposed to work, and that's not how it should work in a civil society. Now, speaking of some very uncivil and unintelligent people, the Squad now doubling down on their version of criminal justice reform, even after the tragedy in Waukesha. AOC is criticizing excessive bail for prisoners in New York City. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, where do you begin? Last night on Axios on HBO, journalist Jonathan Swan confronted Tlaib over a bill she endorsed last year, a bill that would release everyone from federal prisons over the course of 10 years. Watch.
Have you wrestled with any potential downsides of releasing into society every single person who's currently in a federal prison?
Yeah, I think that everyone's like, oh my God, we're going to just release everybody. That's not what I'm... Yeah, but did you see how many people are mentally ill that are in prison right now?
No, I know, but the act that you endorsed actually says release everyone in 10 years.
But think about it. Who will release...
But there are like human traffickers,
I know.
Child sex... So, but you're saying, do you mean that you don't actually support that? Because you endorsed the bill.
No.
She melts like a popsicle in the sun after one question. What a great idea. I mean, yeah, I know. We know. You know? Let's start with the serial killers and sex offenders. When will the tone-deaf squad realize their progressive agenda will never work in the real world and they don't have any actual practical ideas, Jason?
Yeah, Kennedy, what's mind-blowing about this is that the squad is pushing progressive bail reform and emptying our federal prisons into our society just a day after a career criminal with a mile-long rap sheet mowed down children singing Christmas carols in Wisconsin. This is a party that defunds, dissolves, and dismantles police departments while they want to make self-defense illegal. See the Rittenhouse case. They're also disarming America. So they're dangerous. The fact that these are elected officials and these are the things that they're pushing a day after this happened is just atrocious.
Yeah, they're going to push too hard. They're going to go too far, and you're going to have, your Law and Order Joe Biden and Kamala Harris clean up the Democrat Party like she did in California and like Joe Biden did in the early 90s. It's not going to be good. It's all going to be for naught, Richard. All the Democrats are going to try and prove how hardcore they really are. Just watch. Mark my words.
Well, a couple of things here. 1, 2, 3, or 4 members of the Democratic Party does not make up a majority of the 218 members in the United States House of Representatives.
It does when you have that slim of a majority in the House. Yeah, when you've only got 7 seats in the House, they actually do.
Let's be very clear. This bill will not pass, period. Right? And so let's move on to greener pastures. So before folks at home think that this is the Democratic Party, this is what's going to be in our party platform, or this is what the Democratic Party believes or what they stand for, let me let you know that this bill will not pass. This is one member, and this is the bill that they've authored, does not mean it's going to pass. It'll probably die in committee. With that being said, to the point that we heard Scott make just previously, I think he's absolutely right. If we're going to have a long-term conversation about criminal justice reform, we have to both talk about the laws on the books, we have to talk about what's working in the system, and we also talk about what's not working in the system. And that requires, one, making sure we're sending money to police departments where they need it, but also ensuring that as we send money there, we're asking for more accountability, more transparency, and ending many of the bad practices that has caused the mistrust that currently exists in our system.
Mm-hmm. They're not ending any of the bad practices because they overshot their hand. And that's the problem, Scott.
But the reason why they're not is because we can't pass the George Floyd
Scott part means I'm going to talk to Scott now. So, Scott, when you have places like Minneapolis and Portland, which are sending more money to their police departments than they had before, it means that you're not going to get anything done. But, to her point, if they release all the federal prisoners, then all the white-collar criminals that progressives hate so much, they're going to be free to mate off everyone in their orbits.
Yeah, well, I have to say I'm with the leftists on this one, and I'm sure they never read the Constitution, but I have. And the only people who should be in federal prisons should be counterfeiters or Wall Street bankers or war criminals or, a very narrow subset of people. All the rest of felons in America should be prosecuted by the states. And now the transition of current people who are in federal prison who are dangerous and the transition to turning them over to state custody or something like that, I'm not sure on. But remember, the FBI and the Justice Department are the single most corrupt organizations in this country. I mean, these are the people who just framed our last president for treason with the Kremlin, of all things. So you think Rittenhouse got railroaded or almost got railroaded. I mean, the federal prosecutors and the FBI do nothing but railroad innocent people all day, every day. Yeah. Our federal prisons are full of drug businessmen and gun control victims and IRS victims. It's disgusting. It's like this country got taken over by the commies, but we did it to ourselves.
Yeah, but they're still not smart enough to figure out who should stay in and who should be released and who should have gone in the first place. And I don't think that someone like Rashida Tlaib...
Well, if they were good on things, they'd be libertarians.
Exactly. Well said. Absolutely right. And, it's interesting because they must be thrilled with the FBI because now the FBI are going after parents, labeling them domestic terrorists, and they'll be the next group that's rounded up and sent to federal prison. So good job, Squad.